welcome to Wellness with Natasha. I'm your host, Natasha. Thank you so much for joining us today. If you haven't already, download our app on NTV Houston so you can watch our episodes. This is our 4th episode, and I am so excited to talk to you guys about preventing medical conditions. Our guest today will be talking about how to prevent heart conditions, how to keep an eye on blood pressure, and also how to look for stroke. He is a specialist in neurology, and he'll be joining us. I wanted to talk about this topic specifically because what tends to happen with these chronic medical conditions is that sometimes we don't go to the doctor until something is wrong. Now, this is something that happens in a lot of cultures, not just ours, but what we tend to think of health and wellness is different. So we think of sickness as people who go to the doctor, people who have to go to the hospital, and we think of healthy people who don't. But really, in reality, we should all be doing checkups with our primary care physicians. These checkups should at least be yearly. If you don't have any chronic conditions, then you should still be going to the doctor because it is so important to prevent medical conditions from happening, specifically with blood pressure, because it is silent and we don't know when we're actually having high blood pressure. Another important thing is about fueling ourselves to make sure that we don't have drops in our blood sugar, because that can also lead to a lot of problems with our mood and a lot of irritability. So today's episode is going to focus on how we can prevent these medical conditions from getting worse and how we can make sure to look out for signs and symptoms. We'll be introducing our very guest, who is a resident neurologist, right after this break.
शुगरलैंड में आ रहा है अल्ट्रा वर्ल्ड फूड। 61,000 स्क्वायर फीट में होगा आपका अपना देसी मिनी मॉल, जहां ग्रोसरी से लेकर होम फर्निशिंग तक ये है वन स्टॉप शॉप डेस्टिनेशन लोकेटेड इन न्यू टेरिटरी एरिया एट यूनिवर्सिटी एंड ग्रैंड पार्कवे। अल्ट्रा offers retail space for all businesses. Al-Rabba World Foods. For more information, call Amir Ali at 512-652-8462. सुनो, आज क्या पकाऊं?
कुछ नया पकाओ यार।
हर रोज का है देखो एक ही सवाल, आज क्या पकाऊं? क्या है ख्याल? आ गई नई मलका रेसिपी मसाले, खालिस और बेहतरीन अज्जा, मुनफरिद जायका, नो एडेड एमएसजी और ग्लूटेन से महफूज। लखनवी बिरयानी, हैदराबादी अचार गोश्त, पंजाबी तड़का दाल, पेशावरी कढ़ाई। मुझको देखो मिल गया इसका एक हल, रोज है मजा नया, आज हो या कल।
आज तो कमाल कर दिया।
कमाल तो मलका ने किया है।
तुम ही तो हो मेरे दिल की मलका।
मलका, कुछ नया पकाओ।
Our story begins more than 60 years ago inside an abandoned chicken coop where our founder discovered a retired teacher living, no home, no health care. So she said no to this injustice and yes to transforming lives. It's this drive, this compassion that inspired AARP. Today we empower people to choose how they live as they age. We advocate for health and financial security. We strengthen communities everywhere. We are AARP Houston, creating real possibilities.
Kick off the new year with a new Cadillac from Ron Carter Cadillac. Own the new 2020 Cadillac Escalade with $9,000 customer cash, or drive for just $829 a month. The first ever 2020 XT6 premium luxury crossover for $499 a month, or the new 2020 XT4 luxury collection just $379 a month. All for 39 months lease with just $1 down. Your only Houston area Cadillac to your door dealer, RonCarterCadillac.com.
When it comes to protecting yourself and your partners, all the information out there can be overwhelming. Visit our website. We are a free and confidential service striving to help you stay informed and stay notified. We are committed to a healthy Houston.
मनपसंद सुपरमार्केट, जहां की फ्रेश वेजिटेबल्स, स्पाइसेस, फ्रोजन फूड आइटम्स आपको सबसे अच्छे प्राइस में मिलेगी और हलाल ज़बीहा मीट भी मिलेगा। दाम मनपसंद, नाम मनपसंद, तो फिर क्यों ना जाए मनपसंद? Located at Wilcrest Drive, Houston, North Highway and William Cannon Drive, Austin, Texas. तो नाम याद रखिएगा, मनपसंद सुपरमार्केट।
डुबकी लगा ससीटो का मजा बड़ा ससीटो टोमेटो केचप मजे की डुबकी।
And welcome back to Wellness with Natasha. I'm your host, Natasha, and I am so excited to introduce you guys to our guest today. He is a resident neurologist here in the Houston area. In fact, he works in the Med Center here, and he's going to be giving us a lot of advice on blood pressure, stroke prevention, as well as his idea of how he maintains a healthier lifestyle. So please let's welcome our guest today, Dr. Kamrudin. Dr. Kamrudin, thank you for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me, Natasha.
How are you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing good. I think it'd be good to start out with telling our audience really what it is a neurologist does.
Sure. So a neurologist is basically someone who works with diseases of the brain, spinal cord, and nerves that run throughout the body. So the most common types of things we deal with are things like strokes, seizures, but a whole slew of other medical problems that can affect the brain and the nerves throughout the body.
Okay. And there's a common misconception that neurosurgeons and neurologists kind of do the same thing, but I wanted to emphasize that neurosurgeons do more of the surgery and then you do more of the medical aspect behind it.
Correct. Neurologists typically work with more treating on the medical side, and we work closely with our neurosurgery colleagues, but they're the ones who actually do the surgery aspects and everything.
Okay. And tell us a little bit about what a resident is.
So a resident is basically a physician who has completed medical school, has the ability to practice, but is still in training, working with more experienced physicians to learn and continue to grow while also at the same time practicing.
I think that's good to explain because there's a common misconception that residents and med students are the same thing, but it's really important to say that medical school, you finish that, then you start your residency. Depending on your specialty, that's how long it is.
Exactly, and each residency is kind of different lengths. For me personally, in a neurology residency, it's a 4-year residency in my second year, so about halfway through. But some can go as long as 8 years, even longer, and some are even a little bit shorter. So it really depends on what specialty you go into.
Absolutely, and so as a psychiatry resident, I also have a 4-year training as well.
Right.
And just for you guys to know, Dr. Kamrudin and I actually went to medical school together, so I'm glad he's here sharing his expertise.
We did.
I think we'll start with you kind of telling us a little bit about the importance of maintaining blood pressure and a little bit about how you think blood pressure can be maintained with factors that we can control and factors that we maybe cannot.
Right. So blood pressure is a great topic. I'm glad you're talking about it on your show because I think it's something we hear about all the time, but we don't really know how to approach it. It's not really something as a disease, high blood pressure, that shows up in ways until it's kind of already pretty advanced.
Right, so you don't necessarily know you have problems with your blood pressure until...
Exactly. And when it comes to blood pressure, there are some things that are involved with it that you can't change and some things that you can. So examples of things you can't change would be your blood pressure generally goes up as you get older. It can also be due to some genetic factors, things that you necessarily can't change about yourself and about your family history. But there's a lot of things you can do to change. So the way I always explain it with my patients is that health is kind of like a 3-legged stool. It's a balance, and those 3 legs are the 3 things that you can modify to make sure that you can maintain this balance.
Okay.
The first of which is exercise. So exercise is something that we can all always benefit from. It has many benefits in your physical health and your mental health. And the American Heart Association recommends about 150 minutes of moderate exercise per week, which is about 30 minutes per day. Moderate exercise is defined as kind of being able to break a sweat but hold a conversation, like taking a brisk walk, doing some gardening, or 75 minutes per week of more intense exercises. So that would be your running, your biking, something that gets your heart racing and you're a little bit uncomfortable. So exercise is always a big component. The second leg of that stool would be your diet, so eating right. We all hear about the different fad diets and things like that, but the general consensus is that being able to eat things that are more natural,
so whole foods, whole grains, fruits and vegetables, as well as a good balance with proteins, being able to always keep getting better at that. And the last of which is sleep. Sleep is highly important to your brain health and your physical health. I think we forget that third one. I think we forget sleep. I think when we're talking as physicians to patients, and including me, I tend to say, it's really important to get some physical activity in. It's really important to watch your diet, but it's important to go into sleep and discuss that as well.
Exactly. And sleep is so important in how we feel every day and how our mood is and how, our health develops over time. We typically recommend 6 to 8 hours at least of sleep. And also the hygiene of sleep, being able to sleep at an appropriate hour, making sure that you're not in a bright lit room or there's not loud noises, things like that. So that way your quality of sleep is very good as well.
Well, I know that sometimes your quality of sleep might not be as good because you are a resident. That means you work a ton of hours, approximately about 80 hours a week from what I know. Tell us a little bit about how you manage time and your stress and how you kind of keep these, like you said, the 3 legs of the stool stable.
That's true. It's always, balance is always a continuum. You'll never reach a steady state, but you're always trying to do the best you can. But for me, ever since I was younger, even in college, the biggest stress relief I would have is exercise. Whether it's going to the gym and lifting weights, doing some cardio, or even playing. What I call playing, basically, it's exercise kind of disguised as something fun. So for me, that's playing basketball, going for a jog outside, swimming, something like that.
So getting some activity in, but not necessarily making it as chore-like as getting yourself to go to a gym.
Exactly.
And kind of mixing and matching, I guess.
Exactly. It kind of disguises it so that way you're having fun. You don't know that you're actually doing something good for yourself.
Kind of like recess when you're kids.
Basically. Playing.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how do you kind of manage your time in regards to including that into an 80-hour work week?
Right. So, the time that you do have off, because you will always have some time off at some point, is kind of managing, what you feel like your body needs the most. Sometimes, you really just need a good night's sleep. And if that's the case, you take it. And then, sometimes you have to push yourself a little bit and think, well, I haven't moved much today. I gotta, move a little bit. Your body may not be hesitant to it, but, it'll thank you for it later. So it's kind of being able to read your body and react to it and know what's good for it.
That's awesome. So tell me a little bit about how diet plays into this. So I know you mentioned eating healthy and eating whole foods, and you've also mentioned to me that you're very interested in the Mediterranean diet. Tell us a little bit about that.
Right. So you mentioned the Mediterranean diet. I actually, had the opportunity to have some training in culinary medicine, and one of the biggest things they preached is the Mediterranean diet. It's one of the few diets known to actually reduce your risk of heart disease, stroke, and many other conditions. And the reason why it's called the Mediterranean diet is because it involves a lot of foods that are very common to the Mediterranean region. So olive oil, whole grain breads, fish is also a good protein that's pretty clean, that's involved with that. Lentils, beans, leafy greens, a lot of those things, and incorporating that into your cooking and obviously, keeping a varied diet, but being able to follow by a certain amount of rules in balancing your fat content with your carbohydrate content and your protein to kind of create a healthy, sustainable diet that you can do every single day that allows you to maintain a healthy diet.
That's fair.
Yeah.
It's all about kind of bringing these things into your diet, not necessarily changing the entire diet.
Exactly.
Very cool. I think it'd be cool if you shared with us a really interesting case or a patient that inspired you or made you want to continue in your field.
Sure. So, one that comes to mind for me is recently I was working at MD Anderson here in Houston, and we were consulted from the neurology service for a patient that was exhibiting all kinds of strange symptoms. Their personality was different. They were speaking strangely. Their movements were off. And when I went to go see the patient, he wasn't like that, according to his family, even just a few days ago. And so because nobody else could find an answer, they wanted us on board to figure out what was going on.
They consulted you guys?
Exactly. We were able to do a deep dive into his case and kind of go through his history, his medical conditions, the medications he was on, and we had a suspicion about one of the medications he was on. It was confirmed when we got an MRI of his brain that showed that there were some brain structures being affected that could be causing this. We removed the offending agent, that antibiotic, and he started to get better. And
that's great.
Yeah, it's really great. So
you kind of like problem solved and solved the puzzle to figure out what was the agent.
It was one of the cases that reminds me of why I wanted to go in neurology, is that sometimes when nobody else has the answer, they kind of look to you, and you are dealing with an organ that it entails a person's motions, emotions, movements, memories, and you're kind of in charge of that. And I think that that's a great responsibility, but it's an honor to be in that field.
That's awesome. That's very inspiring. I think we'll have Dr. Kamrudin talk to us a little bit about inspiration and about getting into medicine after we come back from a break.
शुगरलैंड में आ रहा है अलरबा वर्ल्ड फूड। 61,000 स्क्वायर फीट में होगा आपका अपना देसी मिनी मॉल, जहां ग्रोसरी से लेकर होम फर्निशिंग तक ये है वन स्टॉप शॉप डेस्टिनेशन। लोकेटेड इन न्यू टेरिटरी एरिया एट यूनिवर्सिटी एंड ग्रैंड पार्कवे, अलरबा ऑफर्स रिटेल स्पेस फॉर ऑल बिजनेसेस। Al-Rabba World Foods. For more information, call Amir Ali at 512-652-8462.
सुनो, आज क्या पकाऊं?
कुछ नया पकाओ यार।
हर रोज का है देखो एक ही सवाल, आज क्या पकाऊं? क्या है ख्याल? आ गए नए मलका रेसिपी मसाले, खालिस और बेहतरीन अज्जा, मुनफरिद जायका, नो एडेड एमएसजी और ग्लूटेन से महफूज। लखनवी बिरयानी, हैदराबादी अचार गोश्त, पंजाबी तड़का दाल, पेशावरी कढ़ाई। मुझको देखो मिल गया इसका एक हल, रोज है मजा नया, आज हो या कल।
आज तो कमाल कर दिया।
कमाल तो मलका ने किया है।
तुम ही तो हो मेरे दिल की मलका।
मलका, कुछ नया पकाओ।
Our story begins more than 60 years ago inside an abandoned chicken coop where our founder discovered a retired teacher living, no home, no health care. So she said no to this injustice and yes to transforming lives. It's this drive, this compassion that inspired AARP. Today we empower people to choose how they live as they age. We advocate for health and financial security. We strengthen communities everywhere. We are AARP Houston, creating real possibilities.
Kick off the new year with a new Cadillac from Ron Carter Cadillac. Own the new 2020 Cadillac Escalade with $9,000 customer cash or drive for just $829 a month. The first ever 2020 XT6 premium luxury crossover for $499 a month, or the new 2020 XT4 luxury collection just $379 a month, all for 39 months lease with just $1 down. Your only Houston area Cadillac to your door dealer, RonCarterCadillac.com.
When it comes to protecting yourself and your partners, all the information out there can be overwhelming. Visit our website. We are a free and confidential service striving to help you stay informed and stay notified. We are committed to a healthy Houston.
मनपसंद सुपरमार्केट, जहां की फ्रेश वेजिटेबल्स, स्पाइसेस, फ्रोजन फूड आइटम्स आपको सबसे अच्छे प्राइस में मिलेंगी और हलाल ज़बीहा मीट भी मिलेगा। दाम मनपसंद, नाम मनपसंद, तो फिर क्यों ना जाए मनपसंद। located at Wilcrest Drive, Houston, North Highway and William Cannon Drive, Austin, Texas. तो नाम याद रखिएगा, मनपसंद सुपरमार्केट।
Sub-Zero! Dookie! Sasito! Dookie! Saucito! Dookie लगा Sasito का मजा बड़ा Sasito tomato ketchup मजे की डुबकी
Welcome back to Wellness with Natasha. We have a very special guest with us, Dr. Kamrudin, and he's been talking to us a little bit about blood pressure as well as his inspiration in medicine. Tell us a little bit about how you got started with medicine, how you picked your specialty.
Sure. So for me, it was an easy choice. I actually was very interested in brain sciences as a kid, back even as far as 7th grade. There's just something about it that I found so fascinating, and I was fortunate enough to do a little bit of research in the field when I was in high school, working in laboratories, and continued that into college. I kind of always knew I wanted to be a neurologist. I guess I'm one of the few that was able to enter medical school sort of already knowing what he wanted to do. And throughout medical school, I had a lot of great experiences that sort of affirmed what I wanted to do, being able to work with great other physicians and coworkers and colleagues. That just made it that much more obvious to me, and going forward, and even today, being able to live out my dream.
That's incredible. So for me, I always wanted to do medicine as well, except I actually had no idea what my specialty was going to be. It wasn't until I found that I was really interested in the mind and body connection that I decided to do psychiatry. So I think everybody has their own story. What advice do you have for everybody out there that wants to do medicine, wants to become a doctor?
You should run. No, I'm just kidding. Becoming a doctor is...
You want them to run?
No, I'm just kidding.
It is hard work. It's not an easy profession.
It is. It's very difficult. It takes a lot of dedication, a lot of years. And what I would say is that if you're wanting to go into the medical field, explore all the options. Doctor isn't the only option. There's a lot of team-based care that's sort of emphasized in healthcare today with our physical therapists, nurses, physician assistants, all sorts of medical professions that kind of provide
that work collaboratively.
And they have their own contribution to medicine. And I think that those are all worth exploring if you're interested in healthcare. If you're interested in going into medicine specifically to become a doctor, it's always important to check in why you want to do that, and remain dedicated to it, because you really do have to stick with it for a long time. And the rewards come from the work, in my opinion. When
Definitely
you're out
not
there,
instantaneous.
Exactly. When you're out there studying for your tests and it's incredibly hard, and you feel like it's hard to go on, but somehow you find the will to do so, that actually is the process of being a doctor, and it always will be. So you just have to love the work, and I think that's what should drive you for sure.
I think that's fair to say. It is a long journey.
Absolutely, as I'm sure you know.
Yes. And so in terms of how your specialty is something that you have to be referred to, or something that's specific to neurology, what advice do you have for people going to the doctor or people going to get yearly checkups? I talked a little bit about the importance of that and how we as a society think that if we don't have any conditions or if we're healthy, we don't need to see a physician regularly.
Right. So, in my opinion, preventative healthcare is healthcare. It shouldn't even be labeled otherwise. Being in a hospital or working in a hospital, that's actually a failure of healthcare. All of the healthcare comes before that, being able to get in with your doctor. And when you go to your physician, being able to talk to them about your concerns. If you have specific concerns about family members in your past who have had conditions that you might be concerned that you would develop, or if you have certain symptoms that you don't think are normal, never feel embarrassed to bring those up with your doctor, because no condition is too small, no symptom is too small. If something feels abnormal to you, voice that concern. It's always good to...
So basically the importance of ahead of time kind of preparing and sharing these things rather than when it's too late. So preventative medicine is key to the medicine that we're practicing today. And I feel like as people who are training in medicine now, that's more of what we emphasize.
Exactly. And the best way to do it, the advice I would give, is that if you're going into your doctor and the days leading up to it, it's always good to, if you have a question that pops in your head that you'd want to ask, write it down. Because just like going to the grocery store or other things, when you get there, sometimes you forget some of the things that you were going to ask or you were going to get. So it's better to write it down so you have all those available for you when you go in for your checkup.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about maintaining blood pressure. I know we touched on it earlier, but if you're already struggling with your blood pressure, what are some ways you can keep track of it?
Right. So keeping track of your blood pressure, if you already know you have problems, it's always good to do a check. I recommend at least a daily check. There are blood pressure cuffs available, luckily pretty widespread throughout the US. Any drugstore you walk into, you're able to obtain one. But even if you're not, most grocery stores or drugstores have free blood pressure cuff machines to check your blood pressure. So checking it and seeing what it runs is always good. And keeping a diary of that as well. Seeing what it looks like maybe in the morning or what it looks like during the day is a good way to kind of keep track of how it's doing.
Absolutely.
And ways to sort of manage your blood pressure. The biggest things would be weight loss. A lot of people who struggle with weight have issues with blood pressure. And when you're dieting and exercise, it's always a good goal to have to remind yourself why you're doing it. It's for your health.
Absolutely. And when you don't have good blood pressure, or you're not taking your meds regularly, or you're not keeping it unchecked, it can lead to a lot of other problems. It's kind of what I want to discuss further. But before doing that, I want to talk about how not having your blood pressure in control can also cause fluctuations in your mood, or can cause a lot of depression over time. And even that depression itself can have later consequences as well. So just your health declining over time.
Yeah, blood pressure is just one of many chronic diseases that can be sort of silent, depression even being one of them. So, as you know, in your field and in mine, there's a lot of overlap in brain health and in mental health. When you're not keeping track of your chronic conditions, both in your mental health and your physical health, they do add up over time. For me personally, it's always important to allow people to do what's best for their physical and mental health as they see fit. You're not going to do everything in one day, and it's really just about managing that as best you can. Over time.
Yeah. And for our last part, I was hoping that you'd share with the audience some preventative stuff for stroke. Now, I know that's one of the things that neurologists are very educated about and have a lot of training in that. So the signs of strokes are particularly important because the time that a stroke can be fully treated, certain kinds of stroke, is limited. And so recognizing the signs and getting help is crucial. Can you share a little bit about that?
Sure thing. So when it comes to strokes, a lot of people hear that word, they don't really know what it means or what a stroke is. What a stroke actually is a lack of blood flow to the brain that may cause certain symptoms. And so the main thing is trying to recognize these symptoms because they may not be obvious. So there's a mnemonic to remember them, a quick little phrase, FAST, F-A-S-T, 4 letters. Important to remember for the symptoms of a stroke. Starting with the letter F. F stands for facial drooping. A lot of the times when you have a stroke, your face may droop to one side or the other. This may not even be noticed by you. This could be noticed by a loved one or someone near you saying that maybe things don't look particularly like they normally do and your face might be drooping.
And that's in your facial features itself, specifically with the eye.
specifically with eyes and lips,
Okay.
that may cause a little bit of drooping to one side more than the other. So if you see that, that could potentially be a sign of a stroke. The second letter, the letter A, stands for arm weakness. So if you're concerned that someone might be having a stroke and you want to kind of check with them and see, hey, are you having these symptoms? A quick test you can do is to check if their arms are weak. Typically, it's usually one side more than the other. So I always say, hold your arms out like a tray, just like this. And sometimes if someone is having a stroke, they may start to have some weakness in one arm. They're not able to keep it up as well as the other. That could be a sign that they might be having a stroke. So we've gone through F, A, and the third one is S. S stands for speech difficulty. Now this is kind of has two parts. They can have speech difficulty in the sense of they might not be able to talk to you properly. It's almost like they're understanding you normally, but they can't get their words out, or you can't say what you're trying to say. In addition, you may be able to talk in normal phrases, but the sound of the speech is different. It sounds a little slurred. The reason for that is actually there's weakness in the muscles creating the speech. So your speech sounds a little bit off from normal. So now we've gone through three of the major symptoms.
F-A-S.
F, A, and S. So facial drooping, arm weakness, and speech difficulty. The last T of the FAST word is time. And that means if you notice these symptoms, it's time to go to the hospital, okay? Time is very, very important in a stroke, okay? In the South Asian community, typically, we don't necessarily like going to doctors. We love it when our children become doctors, right? But we never like going to the doctor. But in the case of these symptoms, it is very important to go
get
to
to
a
the
doctor
hospital.
as soon as you can. The reason for that is that when you're having a stroke, we have a phrase, we say time is brain. Time is brain. That's because the more time that passes, the more damage that is irreversible to the brain. So when you get into a hospital, the magic number is about 4.5 hours. There's a medication that could potentially be given to help you. After that, it can become a little risky. But there's still other things that can be done, even up to a day of the symptoms showing up.
So time is crucial, and recognizing these symptoms or signs are very crucial.
Right. And with the FAST mnemonic, what you can do is keep that with you as a tool to recognize these symptoms either in yourself or in your loved ones, to know that when it's time to get checked out.
Awesome. Thank you, Dr. Kamrudin, for sharing all these expertise of yours. I hope you guys enjoyed that and learned the FAST method, the signs to look out for stroke. I'm really glad you were able to join us and share all your expertise. Thank you for coming here. Thank you for joining us. We'll be back next week with a new guest to talk more about how to live a healthier lifestyle.